Welcome to FTB Fridays. I'm Jason C. McLean with Forget the Box. This is the 27th of November. We're recording this around just after 12:30 in the afternoon. And today we're going to talk about Canadian politics. My guest is a former FTB contributor, political pundit, and lifelong supporter of the working class and the NDP. Welcome, Niall Ricardo.
Thank you very much for having me on, Jason, today.
Very, very welcome. So I guess talking about federal politics, let's jump right into it. There's this story going around that Mexico apparently is going to get COVID vaccines before Canada, and a lot of the other parties are jumping down the Liberals' throat for this one. How do you see that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting, right? It's interesting because we had the ambassador of Mexico come and basically scold the Conservative Party, Michelle Rampel, who's the health critic, if I'm not mistaken, within the Conservative Party's ranks, within the caucus of the Conservative Party, for basically, denigrating Mexico. And he made a very good point. I mean, the reality is that we have to get this vaccine to everybody, right? We have to get this vaccine right across the globe. And one of the biggest problems right now is getting the vaccine to the global south. So I think one of the problems is that we have to also admit our biases with regards to, obviously everybody wants Canada to get this vaccine as soon as possible, but that doesn't exclude the fact that Canada should play an active role to make sure that, vaccines are getting to the global south too, right? Yeah. Countries that also have much less means, than, for example, we do here in Canada. Now, with regards of us receiving the vaccine, the real question about this, and the NDP talked about it, and this is not just because I'm an NDP supporter or it's the NDP bias here speaking. Maybe it is, maybe people will criticize me about that. But the reality that, let's start from the beginning. Why are we here in Canada receiving a vaccine when maybe we could be producing vaccines, right? The pharmaceutical companies in Canada, are huge. We have a lot of pharmaceutical research centers, obviously less than maybe, the United States, in terms of how many United States is just, 10 times more populous than Canada. But the reality of the matter is we have given up a certain level of sovereignty. And I don't say sovereignty in the terms of, our nationalism or patriotism, because I think that goes completely out the window. That's where people lose me. It's our sovereignty as a collective human community, as Canadians, to have, the necessary resources that we need to make sure that everybody, is cared for. And that's really the big problem we have today, is that the Liberals have been giving out money right, left, and center, and to private entities. And we saw that with the WE scandal. Why couldn't the government handle that? Right? Why couldn't the government? Exactly, right? So why couldn't the government handle that? And why can't the government or a public option be put on the table for within the pharmaceutical industry? And that's what we have to think about today. It's a strategic resource today. We know we need to have, that strategic resource available to all Canadians. And it's kind of funny to see that the political options, right, that were on the table, coming back to the comparison with Mexico and on this, because I think it's interesting. Mexico is a country that does not have the resources Canada does. Right? Oh, Mexico is a country that right now, and for the past decade, because of, the failed war on drugs from the United States and from Canada too, has been prone to a civil war, basically, and has been spending so much money, on military, et cetera, and yet they find the means, and yet we're at the same level basically as them, right? Yeah, we're at the same level in terms of getting the vaccine. We have much more means in Canada. We have the possibility. Mexico and other countries, in the global south, unfortunately, do not have the possibility to produce, the vaccine in-house or in their own country. We do, and we made the choice. Conservative and Liberal governments made the choice not to.
Well, it's funny because I actually saw there was some clip. I went on Twitter. I guess a Liberal supporter was sharing this of Trudeau, basically saying the reason why we're not going to have the COVID vaccine produced here is because of the Conservative government, because of the Harper government. Basically, but blaming the Harper government for why.
Isn't it fun? Isn't it fun when the Liberals blame the Conservatives and the Conservatives blame the Liberals and the Liberals? I mean, they can only blame each other. I mean, there's only been two governing parties in Canada.
Yeah. Yeah. And the NDP always, pushing the point that why don't we produce it at home? A very interesting topic. Although since COVID started, especially in the situation of a minority government, I think the NDP has actually been the minority government's been functioning a way that it's almost supposed to function, and the NDP has really been playing a key role in it, and even supporting the Liberals, but also pushing the Liberals more to stuff that benefits people.
Well, yeah, no, I'm actually very proud of what the NDP has been doing in Parliament for sure. I think the NDP came into this Parliament with, let's be honest, we didn't have a good past few years. An election where we lost a lot of seats. But we showed once again why the NDP exists in Canadian politics and why it's important that the NDP exists, right? As a counterbalance to the Liberals and as a counterbalance also, I would call the conservative Liberal apparatus in this country, right? And I put them both together because, we saw it with the wealth tax, right? At the end of the day, the Liberals want all of the NDP policies, right? So, in terms of at least they say, right, that they want Medicare, that they want healthcare, that they want, to invest more in healthcare, that they want, more investment in education, et cetera, making more accessible post-secondary education across the country, et cetera, et cetera. We can list off basically what the Liberals say, the Liberal NDP policies, and Liberals say that that they agree with NDP policy. The problem with the Liberals is that they're not capable of actually, delivering on those promises. And why? Because they don't know how to pay for it, right? Yeah. And we saw that with the wealth tax, right? But more to the point of a minority government, I think the minority government has served its purpose. I think that's why we should also talk about, proportional representation in this country, how we saw it at times of crisis. So it's interesting because I think, and maybe we can have, the hypothetical exercise, here of thinking about if it was a majority government. So imagine if, it was majority Harper, or if it was majority Trudeau, right? I mean, how would have that gone? And I think that it would have gone worse than in a minority context.
There would have been some COVID relief. It would have been better than the States, but we wouldn't have had the CERB, at least not the way we had it, or the CRB, or we wouldn't have gotten, it would have been sort of that, it would have been playing to basically the sort of trying to sound good to help people, but also really helping the corporations. Whereas I guess we should be lucky that, or fortunate that Trudeau is deciding to get support from the NDP instead of support from the Conservatives. Is that because the Conservatives are just not willing to give support unless they go hard right? Or is it that Trudeau's making the smart decision?
So I think what we're going to see is we're going to see the Liberals now try to, there's always two strategies for the Liberals, right? It's either try to take votes away from the Conservatives or try to take votes away from the NDP, right? And Trudeau has been very successful in taking votes away from the NDP. We saw that in 2015, and we saw that in the last election too, where a lot of people rallied behind the Liberals, in crazy results in the last election, right? Like places like Hochelaga that had never gone, liberal in decades, going liberal, right? So they've been very successful in that, and that also, shows to be a little bit more critical of my own party and stuff like that. Not critical necessarily, but it means that we have to reflect on why and how we can get our message out there, or how NDPers can get a message out there that is actually more consistent with, we're the guys that can get it done, right? We're the people that can get it done. But with the Conservatives, I mean, the Conservatives have proven, right, that with the new leadership of O'Toole, that they're not there to negotiate with the Liberals. They're there to try to replace the Liberals. That has been from the get-go, coming out of the leadership race of his victory. Aaron O'Toole was very, very clear that he wanted to replace the Liberals. And I think he's very dangerous. He's very dangerous because he's somebody that is capable, I think, of amassing a lot of support within certain working class communities. He's, targeted certain working class communities, and the Liberals are also putting themselves in a corner, which is normal. I mean, it's a natural thing. The Liberal Party is a party of power and money. Yeah. It's not an ideological party. And so what we're seeing is the normal cycle of the Liberal government's life is that, in the first few years of the cycle, it's like, spring, if we take the context of natural cycles and stuff like that, spring, we're all happy, it's great. Trudeau, it was sunny ways, right? It was sunny ways, became prime minister, everything was great. And then there was summer, right? The summer was, all of this, great stuff that happened right after Trudeau came in. What did he say? Because it's 2016 or because it's 2015, whatever he said at the time, cabinet, all of that. And then you start seeing after, the scandal that we had with Jody Wilson-Raybould, and then the scandal that we have now. And these are ethical scandals that are super. I mean, people try to minimize them, but they're super ethical scandals of super ethical importance, right? In the sense that these really hit at the fabric of Canadian democracy, right? So, I mean, I think that the Conservatives and the Bloc both do not want to work with this Liberal government because their electorate and the people they're going after are not the people that are not people that are considering the Liberals at all. And the Liberals have decided that they're going to have to, make certain cuts to what they thought they were capable of going and getting in terms of electorate.
The Bloc is interesting because they basically sort of came back a bit by going after the NDP. I mean,
so I mean, I think, I mean, it's unfortunate, right? We have a nationalist government in Quebec right now, and that nationalist government, kind of bled over, quote unquote, into the federal realm of politics. And the Bloc is now just, the satellite of the CAQ in Ottawa, right?
Yeah, it's sad, but I mean, do you think that the Bloc is going to succeed, or do you think they're going to get a bit bigger, or if we do have another election, or are they just going to be completely demolished by the Liberals winning in Hochelaga and stuff like that?
I don't think that the Liberals can go and get that vote from the Bloc. The vote that the Bloc got, I think, is a vote of a lot of people that also vote for the CAQ or voted for the CAQ in the last election. Of course, the traditional base, which is, the people that vote for sovereignty no matter what, which is PQ, et cetera, like all down the line, right? But I think that it's actually dangerous, right? Because we're having a little bit, and to talk about, kind of this is global, right? You had Hillary Clinton versus Trump in 2016 in the United States. Biden versus Trump was a rematch basically of that election to a certain extent, but people just realized how bad Trump was and how incompetent he was. If he was more competent, maybe we wouldn't have had the same results. If he was
if he was a slightly better politician and actually told people to wear a mask, maybe you could have.
Or if he was a better politician in the sense that he understood that you can't be a Republican that criticizes veterans, and you can't be a Republican that there's certain things that you have to respect as a Republican. We can get into American politics later, but Mike Pence has proven that he is the best choice for the Republicans in the next election, which is very, very scary for us. But he could, and I mean, what I was getting to is that we see this kind of divide between, the multiculturalists and whatever the hell, liberals, and I'm talking about, not large L liberals, but basically the political philosophy,
social liberals.
Social liberals being the political philosophy of liberalism and stuff like that. The open world multiculturalism. And so this goes with globalization, and this goes with and then you have the conservative wing, that is completely against that. And you have different, varying gradations of it. But basically in France, you also have it, and in Italy, you have it, right? Where in France, you have Marine Le Pen versus Macron, and you have, in Italy, the same kind of dynamic going on in Spain, etc. All this, right? So we're seeing throughout the Western world right now, or at least in democracy, even beyond the Western world, because we saw it in India too, this kind of, revolt against capitalism and against the current form of capitalism that has been embodied into, from my perspective, this kind of revolt against multiculturalism that people see as being just, an annex or, a result of globalism. And the left has not been able to, have a conversation, which is you can be anti-racist, you can be against, you can be multiculturalist, you can accept the fact that we live in, a very diverse society and actually want that and kind of work against, to kind of, kind of like change these institutions, right? The institutions that we live in, right? That are super colonial, racist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, right? You can also be against capitalism, and you can be against capitalism in its global form. And we haven't been able, I mean, AOC started to do that in the United States. Bernie was still, capable of doing that. We're seeing kind of discourses that are doing that throughout the world. But here in Canada, that's what's happening. That's why I did the whole roundabout to get back to this. But that's why I don't think that the liberals aren't going after the Bloc voters, and the Bloc isn't going after liberal voters. And so the only way to really stop this divide that is going to really, really hurt us in the long run, right? Is for people, to be able to criticize capitalism, to articulate a discourse that criticizes capitalism and criticizes, racism and all of these things at the same time.
Yeah. Well, in that long the trip around the world there, you did mention AOC, and actually she is going to be Twitch streaming tonight, but she's going to be doing it with Jagmeet Singh.
Yeah, she is. I mean, I'm really happy about that. I think that, talking about somebody who's trying to bring that together is Jagmeet. And I'm not saying that just because, he's the leader of the NDP again. I recognize my bias as being an NDP and stuff like that. But I think that it's going to be super interesting to see what, links we can create between, what's happening in the United States. Very, very amazing things that are the super amazing things that are happening in the United States, with AOC and with that whole generation, post Bernie 2016 run that kind of like is coming up through the ranks. And when you think about it, it's crazy. It's like, it's been what, 4 years?
4 years. Well, yeah, exactly 4 years. I mean, we just had another election. Yeah.
Yeah. So exactly 4 years. And when you think about it, like, we get down a lot in progressive communities, our communities of, left-wing people, left-wing movements, and, people that want to see stuff change a little bit quicker. When we, after, Biden's victory, it's been a rough year, Corbyn losing in the UK and stuff like that. But like, at the end of the day, when you think about it, it's amazing what that movement has been able to accomplish in 4 years. Cory Bush was elected.
Yeah.
They were all reelected. Ian Amar.
Jamal Bowman. Jamal Bowman.
Yeah, Jamal Bowman, absolutely great, race he ran there in New York. And they're just getting stronger. This caucus is getting stronger within the Democratic Party. I think that they've seen the limits of the Democratic Party. Now I want to see what's going to come out of this, new People's Movement or People's Party, that the movement for a People's Party that Nina Turner is pushing for in the United States. But I think that the links between the NDP and this caucus have to become stronger. We have to learn from how they convinced, because the only way we're going to get out of this terrible, terrible era of things that we're in right now is if we, convince people that don't necessarily agree with us.
Yeah.
And I think that we've lost that a lot, because the liberals, and when I say liberals, I'm talking as much about the political party as I'm talking about, little L liberals and stuff like that. The liberals are not interested in convincing people that don't agree with them.
Yeah.
They want to convince the urban elites. They want to convince, and I mean, I'm using elites.
The suburbs. Canadian elections. Someone told me Canadian elections are decided in the 905 and the 519, pretty much. Like, that's what someone said to me. Like,
that's 100%. That's 100% true. And I think that there's also this problem, within, and that's another conversation, right, about the suburbs and like the whole why we have to go in and organize the suburbs and why we have to go in and there's been interesting articles about that and stuff like that. But what that divide that I was talking about before, if we as progressives don't succeed in talking at the same time to working class people that are fed up and sick and tired and feel like they're getting screwed over by the system, and at the same time talk to racialized communities and succeed in showing that that capitalism has a racial aspect to it, that the working class is not just a white working class. It's like a working class that includes everybody from every single race, and the fact that you are part of this working class is what makes what can unite us. So this fight, but that union has to be fighting against racism too, fighting against all of these things. So AOC does a terrific deal.
Yeah. Jagmeet sort of light, do you think, by realizing that who he's aligning himself with? Do you think that is it just because of her social media prowess, or do you think he gets that she's talking to the right people, the same kind of people that we should be talking to?
Oh no, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Jagmeet and everybody in the NDP, for sure, we all realize, that this is the way we have to go forward. And we all realize, and what I like about AOC, I also like about Jagmeet in the sense that I think that, Jagmeet can speak to these issues within, because the reality today is that we think of the working class as, guys with hard helmets that, work at a metal,
It's not that.
factory, wherever, at Hamilton. It's not that. It's not that. It's people
of it's
working
that.
essential services.
Yeah.
Some of it's that, of course. And that's very important that we go and speak to those people and we say, yes, you are working class folks, and working class folks have to stand up for other working class folks. It'd be, the cashier at Dollarama. We've seen all of the, campaign to get, a living wage at Dollarama, all of the essential workers, right? Every single essential worker that actually, could not, I'm not talking about essential workers in hospitals, but every essential worker that could not say, well, I'm not getting up today, I'm not going into my work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They were working class folks.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where we have to, and most of them racialized too. And that's why we saw the spread in certain communities like Montreal North, et cetera. So that's why we have to go, right. And be able to articulate this discourse, which is, you can be for a world that, includes everybody, that, world, let's hope that there one day where borders are not as rigid, where people can move from one place to the other. And the fact that you can do that all while saying, we're all workers, and, to take back the term of Marx, all workers of the unite,
mass solidarity.
So I think, exact mass solidarity. And the fact that you can, I think AOC does it a lot, and she articulates all of these discourses together, but she always brings it back to one thing. It's that, at the end of the day, we've got people in Parliament. Most people in Parliament, they're fighting for, people that make millions, lobbyists, whoever they decide the middle classes, if you're included in the middle class or not, but they're not fighting for working class people. And, this idea now of middle class has kind of been shunned by this whole pandemic, because, you look at it and like most people are working class people. Most people right now are struggling to make ends meet right at the end of the month. So that's what we need people in Parliament fighting for. And I'm super happy to see that Jagmeet is in Parliament here in Canada fighting for that, and that he's making those ties with AOC in the States, because at the end of the day, we need those international ties, because the only way we're going to get the solutions that we need for the whole world is, and the solution that we need for working class here is if those solutions include working classes throughout the world, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, it's been a great talk. I want to thank you very much, Niall, for joining us. People can follow you on Instagram. I actually forgot what you said. The Instagram. What is your Instagram again?
Yeah, my Instagram is Niall Clapham-Ricardo. You can find me that, and my handle is NCR7. It's not a play on Cristiano Ronaldo, although I'm Portuguese. It's because I was born on the 7th of June. So don't think I'm trying to compare myself to Ronaldo, because I don't have his skills. That's for sure.
Yes. Well, again, thank you very much for joining us, and you can follow Forget the Box on Facebook and Twitter at Forget the Box. So give us a like and a share on YouTube as well too, and we'll catch you next week for another FTB Fridays.